Lake Macquarie Mayor John Kilpatrick is the first to admit development applications could be processed much quicker than the 60 days it currently takes his council to approve them. But in a move to cut the red tape out of building applications, a working group has suggested DAs should not take longer than 7 days to process, something the Lake Macquarie Mayor says is quite unachievable across the board.
Certain minor developments, I guess, you could get put through, but whenever you give notice to the neighbours and give them an opportunity to respond, then it's obviously not possible within 7 days.
A review of current assessment and approval systems has recommended several changes be made, including the training of all councillors in the planning process and the removal of council assessment of up to 70% of development applications for single houses, sheds and carports.
If they fit the rules that have been established, certain distances from certain ways, certain setbacks, then they shouldn't. They should be approved much quicker perhaps than they do.
Lord Mayor of neighbouring Newcastle Council John Tate believes his Urban Design Consultative Committee is already fulfilling those recommendations. And with a standard DA taking just 22 days on average to complete in the city, he says if it's not broke, don't fix it. RFS crews thought they had the upper hand fighting 3 separate fires burning at Richmond Vale, only to be dealt a foul blow just after midday.
We had westerly wind for some time and then suddenly we turned from the south, which then we had to redeploy our units back to the other side of the fire.
But with that change came cooler temperatures and the threat to homes along George Booth Drive eased. Authorities are yet to determine how the fire started and they anticipate conditions will ease overnight.
We have got a southerly change coming which is stronger again. I'm not sure how long that'll be. That could cause us a problem later, but hopefully what we've got in planning at the moment will be right.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Hello and welcome to the 21st edition of Soundtracks. Soundtracks is an audio newsletter produced by Guide Dogs NSW/.
Today's studio recording is hopefully the beginning of a long friendship with Guide Dogs and 2NURFM. When the Newcastle-based community radio station was asked to help produce the audio newsletter, it answered the call free of charge.
It's really just an extension of what the radio station does. It's part of the community, and the Guide Dogs and their listeners are part of the community as well.
4 times a year, announcer Lindsay Carr will join Debbie Howe and producer Jane Klein to record the Soundtracks newsletter on a CD. It'll then be transferred to cassettes and sent out to nearly 3,000 visually impaired listeners. Everything from new library equipment, research projects and state rail issues will be covered, providing a valuable hour-long information package.
The only way that we can keep them up to date with what's going on and what's new or what's available or stories.
The latest Guide Dogs newsletter will be available to listeners from early next month.
Sit back, relax and enjoy this 21st edition of Soundtracks.
Although a steering committee has been formulating a turtle management plan for 12 months, it's just come into effect. And given the number of sick turtles surfacing on the Central Coast and at Port Stephens in recent weeks, the need to educate those who stumble across them is at its peak.
A lot of people have seen them in there, but they didn't realise that a lot of the turtles are threatened. They're listed as threatened. And the more information that we gain on the populations there, the more we can do to actually look at making decisions to help manage them.
The National Parks and Wildlife Service has started selling glossy posters which identifies various local species and handing out marine turtle record cards to better track what's being called a threatened ancient icon. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Judith Brown was violently bashed around the head several times at her Enna Bay home in June 2000. Her husband, 46-year-old Ross Ernest Brown, is charged with her murder and has pleaded not guilty. In summing up before the Supreme Court today, Crown Prosecutor Wayne Creasy said the accused was in a poor financial situation and he had lied to police about the time he had left his home the day of the murder. The Crown also argued Brown believed his wife was being unfaithful and the scene of the crime was made to look as if it had been ransacked. The perpetrator of this incident was not an intruder, but the accused. How likely would it be that an intruder, if surprised, would have killed Mrs. Brown? At the most, you would think they would at least push her out of the way. The prosecution argued following Mrs. Brown's death, Ross Brown's behaviour was completely over the top, that it was indicative of a man who was trying to act the part of a grieving husband. However, Defence Counsel Carolyn Davenport said there is a doubt of reliability in the evidence given by Brown's neighbour, who allegedly heard an argument and screams. The defence argued no one else in the street heard anything. The jury is expected to retire tomorrow. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
It's an unfamiliar place for Matt Shanahan, the first time in his 10-year NBL career that he's been forced to sit off court because of injury. The captain has undergone 3 weeks of intensive physiotherapy for a tendon injury in his foot and will miss the next 3 matches, including tomorrow night's clash with the Sydney Kings.
It's very frustrating, but at the same time I've got to make sure that the injury's fully healed, otherwise I'll be sitting out for a lot longer than I plan to be.
Travis Lindstrom will join the starting side of Chris Harriman, Chris Brown, Kevin Brooks and Michael Kingma against a potent Sydney side. The Pirates are expecting big things from the US recruit who racked up 22 points in last week's match against Sydney West.
There's an opportunity for him to play and he's done well last week and we're hoping he can do the same thing tomorrow night against Sydney.
The Kings boast size, experience and a premiership win, things the recently formed Pirates are lacking. It's hoped last week's training camp will give the side added confidence on the court, resulting in game points.
We can't have lapses in execution like we had against West Sydney. When we're in a position to win a game, we can't have those kind of mental breakdowns.
Colleen West, NBN News. The recently restored Craven crane arrived from England in 1886 and was used for lifting heavy equipment in Newcastle's locomotive boiler shop, now known as the Honeysuckle Workshops. Members of Engineers Australia's Newcastle division recently took over maintenance of the crane. Its technology continues to amaze the group.
What ingenuity the engineers in the 19th century came to bear on the problem of transferring power when they didn't have the small electric motors which we now have.
Across town, and they may be a little smaller in size, but these engineering and science projects are proving a challenge for hundreds of the region's primary school students. Teams of students will spend the next 3 days designing, building and testing their model barges, dole seats and bridges in the Newcastle Regional Museum Challenge. There have already been some ingenious ideas. Judges amazed at what can be achieved with paddle pop sticks, straws and a little sticky tape. Colleen West, NBN News.
It was a miserable night on and off the field that for the team and fans only got worse. Last Friday night's loss to Sydney Olympic saw Newcastle United hit its lowest point for the season.
We've only conceded 1 goal in the last 2 games, which on the positive side defensively is great, but we haven't scored, so we're giving ourselves no chance of winning it at the moment.
And it's not about to get any easier thanks to giant killers Wollongong. The Wolves beat Perth last weekend, which will only make United's job of turning its season around that much tougher.
They've come off the loss, and a surprising loss to Wollongong, so they'll be certainly fired up for it. So, but whatever, it wasn't going to be an easy game there. They're the benchmark for everybody.
Peter McPherson and Mitchell Wallace have been promoted from the youth team for this weekend's clash. The experienced Peter Zakenis returns from injury, but that's expected to be nullified with Milan Blagojevich in doubt. But despite the recent poor form and prospect of taking on one of the league's best attacking teams, coach Ian Crook isn't about to change tactics just yet.
I'd rather go down fighting, going for the 3, than come out of it at the end of the day with maybe a point and not even giving ourselves a chance of winning the game.
Meanwhile, captain Robbie Middleby should know by tomorrow if he's suspended for 1 or 2 matches following this tackle in last week's game. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Work crews were hard at it today at Francis Greenway High after thousands of litres of rainwater spilt through roofs and flowed into classrooms on Sunday night.
It's been the most significant disruption I've ever experienced in a school.
30 out of 40 rooms have been damaged, and staff are hoping that Year 9 and 10 students will be allowed back to school by the end of the week.
Today we have 7, 8 and 11, and we're hoping that we'll be fully operational by Friday.
The state government has pledged a total of $600,000 to repair the buildings, but parents say it's not enough to fix the ageing school's problems.
Nowhere near doing the job. It's simply a band-aid solution to a major problem that's ongoing at this school.
Part of the school grounds have also collapsed. For the school community, the promised repairs can't come fast enough. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A memorial wall containing 1,500 names is the hunter's permanent reminder that being a coal miner can be a deadly occupation. Frustrated that in 200 years of mining in New South Wales, there have only been 2 successful prosecutions over miners' deaths, both since 2001, the Miners' Union is demanding state government action on workplace safety. Northern District President Peter Murray says the past performance of the Mineral Resources Department has prompted his union to suggest the appointment of a new safety watchdog.
Now, you've got to ask the question, if these people don't want to do their job, well then maybe the minister's got to have a look at the relevance of that particular department and get rid of it.
The Industrial Relations Commission today received a 7-point plan from the union on the future administration and regulation of coal mine safety. The court was told action is urgently needed.
And what people need to understand is that almost constantly on a weekly basis there is a person working in the mining industry that finishes up with a disability injury. Some people finish up in a wheelchair. There's never been one single prosecution.
While the hearing has delayed a proposed national coal industry strike, another outstanding matter is threatening industry peace. The state government continues to consider options on a stalled prosecution over the death of 4 miners at Gretley Colliery in 1997. The mine owner wants the case thrown out on a technicality. However, the union is demanding retrospective legislation to allow the hearing to resume next week. Gary Blair, NBN News.
He might only be 22, but Gavin Lowcock has had almost 100 amateur fights, won an Australian bantamweight title and taken a 4-year hiatus from the sport he loves. But tomorrow night he's back after months of training in the hope of making it as a pro.
It is a little bit nervous, but I'm pretty confident I can pull off the goods on the night. I've never been as hungry or prepared for a single fight before.
And he's not joking. When Lowcock decided to step back into the ring in April, he weighed 84 kilograms. He now tips the scales at a lightweight 61. It's that determination that's sure to unsettle opponent Brendan Batty.
He's ranked number 10 in Australia. He's pretty experienced as a professional, but as I said, I'm pretty confident.
Lowcock is the main fight of a program that includes 14 amateur bouts and 2 pro at the Mayfield Ex-Services Club. Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
Named after a flighty seabird, the Hunter Jaegers got together today for the first time as a team. They'll carry the hopes of the region in next year's 8-team national netball competition.
A number of them have been playing at this level for quite some time, so they've got a wealth of knowledge to share with our young up-and-coming. We've got 3 players who are debuting at this level in netball, and they're sort of been the wide-eyed girls all weekend going, we're just not sure what to expect over the next couple of months.
Coach Maria Lynch had her first look at the girls in action today and says they're already in good shape.
These girls are all athletes. A number of them have come off nationals only a few weeks ago, so they know how to keep themselves pretty fit because they know if they lose it, it's too hard to get it back again.
Former Australian and Sydney Swifts player and local girl Reagan Jackson returns to the court after a 2-year break during which she had a baby.
I wasn't planning on coming back to play netball because it was never going to be a reality. I was going to have to go back to Sydney, so this is a great opportunity for me to have another run around.
Newcastle Station is dubbed the home of Surffest, and if Save Our Rail chairman Jeff Payne is right, it will experience a wave of support on Saturday. A rally to step up opposition to axing the line is expected to see more support than the 450-plus crowd that packed City Hall in October. If that gathering is a guide, it will prove the future of Newcastle train services is a regional issue.
And around about 20% came from the Maitland area. 2 people came from Dungog and stayed overnight in a local hotel. A lot of people came from Stockton. And these people, this is their transport hub.
With Lower Hunter Transport Working Group reports proposing Broadmeadow Station as an interchange where Newcastle commuters would switch to city-bound buses, Save Our Rail now wants to make the issue the subject of political debate. It wants the March local government elections to become a veritable referendum.
All the candidates for local council have been surveyed and then we'll publicise the results. All those in favour of keeping the rail line will make sure that people know this is a key issue.
The rally from noon Saturday is in the park opposite Newcastle Station. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Hidden away at the northern tip of Swansea, this popular little stretch of Lake Foreshore has been slowly disappearing inch by inch.
This area is a very popular swimming and picnicking area, and so it's been under a lot of stress, and particularly with the westerly winds and the currents around here. So the aim is to try and stabilise that.
Around 5 metres of land has eroded away from this corner of the reserve in the last few years, so a rock groin is being built at a cost of $80,000, part of $250,000 worth of work carried out in the Coon Island area.
Some of the trees have been falling into the lake and it's under a lot of stress. Once the stabilisation works have been completed, we'll also do some further native vegetation to try and further enhance and provide further shade and make it more attractive.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Which way did you just go? Good. Good. Yes, Melzy, lovely. Ah, lovely. Good save, JP.
Forced to move south in order to find some protection, it was other craft that boat crews had to keep an eye out for. They weren't the only ones ducking for cover, as a big shored up and relentless sets caused all sorts of trouble. Conditions were proving a bigger test than fellow competitors. Some bailed out, while Terrigal's Reed Schofield didn't get a chance, swallowed up by the surf. Wanda's Kirsten Jenkins missed trouble to beat home Nicole Sheedy and Candice Falzon in the Open Women's Board. After winning the Open Men's Ski Paddle, Peter Scott was all smiles, but just seconds into the doubles final, it all went backwards. And the Redhead crew weren't the only ones hitting trouble. Teenage Caves Beach pair of Matt Begg and Adam Rowe continue to make a name for themselves. They beat home North Bondi on the line to win today. In the Ironman, Cronulla's Nathan Smith returned to his state title-winning beach, but it was Avoca's Daniel Shade who got the early break in today's final. After narrowly missing a contract on the Nutrigrain series, the 20-year-old had a big day out.
I got the board earlier on today, so I was pretty surprised with that. And then the Ironman, I thought, got to give it all my gut and try and prove a point, so yeah, I was happy.
Just half the Iron Woman field started their final, and most of those got wiped out on one wave. The rest got hammered on the ski leg. Before the lakes, Emma Schneider made it a Central Coast quinella.
It's a confidence booster, as it's always good to win.
The Merewether Baths looked about as inviting as the infamous Melbourne Knights' home ground. Today's cold and wet conditions may have masked the soreness of last night's match, but nothing could hide the disappointment from a game full of missed opportunity.
Before the game you might have sort of said, you walk away if you got a point, not overly disappointed, but I think this morning it feels like we've lost because we created so many chances.
Newcastle goalkeeper John Perosh was not forced to make a save until the second half, but he couldn't stop Tommy Razov from poaching one just after the break. United hung in and answered with Scott Thomas's long ball and Ryan Griffith's finish. Despite setting up a number of opportunities, the winning strike just couldn't be found as the visitors settled for a 1-1 draw. A fourth yellow card for Thomas means he'll miss Friday night's match against the Football Kings, while Damien Brown has lower leg troubles. Good news though on Milan Blagojevic, he'll be fit to play, while captain Robbie Middleby has served his 2-week suspension to take on his former club. Newcastle's spot just inside the top 6 may only last until midweek, as most clubs play a midweek round match on Wednesday night. Playing with Robert Allenby in the final group at the Australian Masters would have overwhelmed many a seasoned golfer, but at 21, James Nitties took it all in his stride. With some big play off the tees and some great touch on the greens, the amateur looked like pulling off the incredible. 4 consecutive bogeys on the back nine ruined his run for the gold jacket, but finishing 7 under for the tournament, he'd upstaged most of the pros. Nitties will remain in Melbourne ahead of the Australian Open before heading to New Zealand early in the new year. Newcastle's Julie Towers and her Hockeyroos teammates are now enjoying a 6-week break after their thrilling 3-2 win against China to claim the Champions Trophy. Towers had everyone jumping in the opening minute, scoring the first goal. After battling injury all week, her tap-in was the perfect start. Her defence just as courageous. While in attack, she always caused problems for the Chinese. The Hockeyroos' next appearance will be in the Olympic Test event in Athens during February, before a Test series in South Africa. The Olympic team will be announced around June.
The new plan to guide future development around Lake Macquarie has been with the state government for 12 months. It's now expected to get approval after council changed proposed zonings for 20 properties. It overcomes what's described as back zoning, which potentially reduces the value and restricts the development of some holdings. The move has disappointed Lake Mayor John Kilpatrick.
There are problems with most of the zonings, but the Minister said that they don't want back zoning, and so we've gone back to zonings that we think are incorrect from the 1984 plan. But if it gets the rest of the plan through, then I guess we've just got to go with the flow.
However, community advocacy group Fair Go believes it's too early for residents to declare victory in the battle over the plan.
Many people don't understand that they will be affected in some form or another, so hopefully there won't be problems, but we certainly believe that there is still some work to be done.
One property covered by the deal is the knoll beside the former Dudley Hospital. The knoll will be zoned residential to allow for a future sale by Hunter Health, and that sets the scene for a fight with the local community, which wants the area protected from development. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Very nice.
They're also looking into the feasibility of capturing the lucrative backpacker market.
This has the possibilities of being a major regional tourist facility.
The jail officially opens for tours this Saturday as part of Maitland's Heritage Month. To Tourism Gongs and Barrington Guest House has won 3 at the Hunter Region Tourism Awards. The Guest House took out the Environmental, Superior Accommodation and Contribution to Regional Tourism Awards. Eagle Reach Resort near Vasey was a joint winner of the Superior Accommodation section, while the Esplanade in Newcastle won its 5th consecutive award for deluxe accommodation. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Throsby Creek has been home to the Newcastle Rowing Club regattas for some years, but outside of competition, the club has never had a place to call their own. With membership at saturation point, the club has grown beyond its means, and it's just lodged a funding submission to the Department of Sport and Recreation for a multi-purpose rowing and aquatic centre.
Well, for stage 1, we're talking a bit over $500,000. In terms of the timeline, well, 12 months from now, we'll be having another regatta here, and hopefully we'll have a shed there to look at.
The Sprint Regatta today featured the unique Throsby Creek Gift, which is a relay event that starts with a doubles crew before a foursome take up the second leg. A quad anchors the event, and in a thrilling finish, 2-time winners Newcastle were beaten on the line. Hunter has finished 4th at the State Surf Lifesaving Interbranch Championship at Foster. The 2-day carnival wrapped up today with Central Coast claiming the overall point score for the 4th time in 5 years. As expected, its members dominate the state team to compete in Victoria next month, with 17 selected, while 8 Hunter clubbies also made it.
Young people are the target of the campaign, which has a simple message: it's wrong to steal. While the message may be obvious, police say it's necessary to reinforce in the community, just like other campaigns targeting drink driving.
There are some people out there that aren't fundamentally told that stealing is wrong, and how would they feel if they were the victim of a stealing matter, how it impacts on themselves, on their family, on their friends.
Northern Region Police and NRMA Insurance have joined forces for the campaign. A series of commercials will be shown on NBN for the next 12 months. Currently, there are 3,119 stealing offences per month from the Hawkesbury River to the Queensland border. Police say if property theft is reduced, they can dedicate more resources pursuing other crimes.
We see this as part of a two-pronged approach. One side is enforcement and enforcing the law, targeting recidivist offenders, but through education, through this sustained media campaign, we think that we can even reduce the property theft further.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
It's a sight that is becoming more common in Newcastle Harbour. Not only are coal ships heading into port, but luxury cruise lines are now deciding to include Newcastle on their itineraries.
It's important for us to give our customers a little variety and some new destinations. And of course, Newcastle itself offers such a great opportunity to get out into the country and where into the wine region, particularly where it's very accessible.
It could be a major economic boon for the Hunter. It's estimated just one stopover could be worth as much as $1 million in passenger purchases and ship provisions.
This area is being recognised in a new market for its tourism qualities, and that's very good because as you build on all of these qualities and as more people know about it, the tourism industry will enhance and expand, and that's good. It means jobs.
The first ship is due to arrive on January 21 and is due to return on February 19. Another Silver Sea ship is expected to dock in January 2005. Each ship carries approximately 400 people and each stopover is just for one day. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
Unlike the game Kaplunk, Petonk doesn't get its name from the sound the steel ball makes when it hits its target. Instead, Petonk simply means feet together. It's an easy game to grasp, players trying to get closest to the jack or cochonnet, which is French for little pig. And it's that simplicity and ease of play the Lake Macquarie Petonk Club hopes will draw new members to the sport, not to mention new facilities it has acquired. Lake Macquarie Council handed over control of the Tarrabal tennis courts to the club, which will now remodel 2 of the 4 courts for the sport.
It'll probably be one of the best facilities in Australia for Petonk, which is excellent.
The club hopes to broaden the sport's appeal by holding coaching clinics for juniors and night competitions in the new year.
We used to play at Warners Bay, and anywhere between 30 and 50 people over 3 or 4 hours would stop and say good day and watch the game.
And one only has to ask Jacques, the 87-and-a-half-year-old Frenchman who started playing in this country 40 years ago, to realise Australians are warming to the sport in ever-increasing numbers.
First, of course, no, but later on, yes, because I used to insist, you know.
Colin Robinson, NBN News.
A summer Saturday morning spent at the beach sounds like a good idea, but in a rugby league pre-season, it may as well be boot camp. This, the last of 3 sessions held among the sand dunes near Anna Bay, but familiar surrounds didn't make things any easier. Looking like his neck injury was well and truly behind him, Captain Andrew Johns led the way. And while a host of other key players continue to impress, some new faces have also emerged. It's some of the old, though, that coach Michael Hagan is still concerned about.
BK's doing a little bit of running, still struggling a bit, I'd have to say.
Still shouldering off-season surgery, Mark Hughes is hoping to be ready for season kick-off as the competition for positions will really hot up in the new year.
And obviously Steve Simpson, Danny Badiris, we haven't seen them yet, but they'll rejoin the group after Christmas, so we should be, pretty strong when we start.
The Aussie icon is at the centre of a debate between the Mile Koala and Environmental Support Group and an ecologist from Sydney. It all started following a recent working bee when exotic weeds such as lantana were removed from the Hawk's Nest Koala Reserve.
They're not natural, they've been brought in by other agents and it's a constant job to keep them out.
But 3 years ago, lantana and bitu bush were also removed using bulldozers from this nearby land. The owner was prosecuted in the Land and Environment Court. Ecologist Dr Graham Wells has claimed the recent clearing was also illegal. But locals claim he simply got it wrong.
Our clearing was controlled according to a management plan. With the full knowledge of the authorities and the support of the authorities.
It's disappointing that those comments were made, and I don't know what basis they're made on, but we believe we've done the right thing there.
Dr Wells was unable to be contacted today. As for the environmentalists, they say they'll do it all again to ensure the forest is preserved. Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
3 nights after a hiding in Brisbane, Hunter was seeking to make amends at home, but they don't come much bigger than the Hawks. Winning a starting spot after successive game-high scores, it was Geordie Cullen's defence that got a workout early. His inclusion freed up import Kevin Brooks, and he responded with a personal tally of 16. Coming back from injury via the bench, Matt Shanahan made an instant impact, while Michael Kingma got some good numbers up as well. Points came thick and fast at the other end too. Glenn Saville in fine touch, and Axel Dench had the radar on as well. Watching Darnell Mee move, it's easy to see why he's racked up over 3,000 career points, passing the milestone overnight. Although in front from midway through the first quarter, the Hawks' lead margin fluctuated throughout as the Pirates got back within range each time the Hawks threatened to kick clear. Shanahan finished with 22 for the game as Hunter now prepare for a return trip to Brisbane.
The first wave of holiday traffic continues to make its way through the Hunter, but only 4 days into the Christmas New Year police enforcement, Hunter officers are already wondering why drivers are in a rush.
There have been just over 550 drivers booked for speeding, and this is very, very concerning considering for the same period last year there was just over 280 booked for speeding.
Waratah Highway Patrol had an impact at the northern end of the F3 freeway, issuing 220 speeding fines over the weekend. One arrest on the freeway included an allegedly drunk driver who was disqualified until 2018.
So he's got another 15 years to go before he can even apply for a licence, driving, and on top of that, found with alcohol in his blood as well.
Almost 4,500 drivers have been breath tested, with 36 arrested for drink driving, which is on par with the same time last year. Police are readying themselves for the next wave of traffic, which will peak on Friday around Karua.
And I just advise drivers to take their time, don't get frustrated if they are delayed in traffic for periods of time, and make sure that they get to their destination safely.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
Hospital patients wheeling trolleys strapped with packages of intravenous fluid could soon become a thing of the past. This new device offers the prospect of a simple and inexpensive method of supplying medication to patients from a mobile pack. The prototype, dubbed Moby Drip, requires no power source, is lightweight, portable and easy to operate.
The main application, I think, is to use for home health care. Actually allowing people to go home from hospital sooner and therefore be able to be treated in their own homes.
The drip infusion system uses gas pressure to provide constant controlled drug delivery. Scientists at the University of Newcastle are working closely with Melbourne's Prince Alfred Hospital to refine the prototype, which Dr Destor hopes will be commercially available in 2005.
The first stage is to build our next prototype, which will be lighter and easier to use in terms of being able to open and close the device.
The project has already earned the university recognition at the Australian Business Ideas Awards. Moby Drip named one of 8 finalists in the category for Best Product. Colleen West, NBN News. Meet the newest addition to the Blackbutt Reserve family. It's been a busy 24 hours for this pair of quolls, adjusting to the unfamiliar sounds and surrounds of their new lush home.
So we deliberately brought them back yesterday evening after the park was closed to the public to make sure they had plenty of time to settle into their new enclosure before the public came along.
The quolls come courtesy of Sydney's Featherdale Wildlife Park and will offer visitors a rare chance to see the vulnerable species in a replica of their natural habitat. The quoll, which is the largest marsupial carnivore in mainland Australia, boosts Blackbutt Reserve's number of native species to almost 50.
And we're always looking at new ways of educating people about the importance of conservation, and this is another program we can get involved in.
It's estimated there are less than 100,000 of the possum-like creatures in Australia, but it's hoped that will change with the help of this pair.
If they were to breed, I mean, that indicates to us that we've got the right sort of mix of habitat, sort of the right diet, and sort of everything's going well for them.
Colleen West, NBN News.
Some people like to walk off Christmas cheer, but it's the tennis court that Trudy Musgrave sweated out the joys of the festive season today. While battling a sore throat and a shoulder complaint, the 26-year-old is gearing up for a return to her home open.
I've played there a lot of times in doubles and twice in singles in main draw, and this year I think I'm probably going into it the most experienced and probably the most relaxed I've ever been.
It's a reflection of a change in attitude which now centres on performance rather than expectation. Events at the Gold Coast and Canberra will prelude her Australian Open campaign that will include doubles and may yet also see her line up in the mixed.
It kind of depends how Wayne Arthurs goes in his singles, but I'd like him to do well, but if he doesn't, then we probably will team up.
In contrast, fellow Novocastrian Rachel McQuillan will miss the Australian summer circuit for the first time in years. What was meant to be minor knee surgery has ended with the former Federation Cup member ruled out for up to 3 months. Meanwhile, the Hunter Pirates are in Brisbane tonight, gearing up for tomorrow night's NBL match against the Bullets. The visitors will be out to make up for a 43-point hiding suffered on their trip north 2 weeks ago.
You'll definitely see a different side, and given that we're changing the starting lineup, adding a bit more scoring power in there as well, I think you'll definitely see a different ball colour.
Whether it's to continue the Christmas party or simply prolong the hangover, Newcastle's Boxing Day races has become the place for both.
It's really our Melbourne Cup Day, isn't it? I think people are in the mood to party after Christmas Day, and there's nothing else, no other sport on. The major shopping centres aren't open. We've handled that pretty well.
With Santa now on a well-needed break, some of his helpers had the same idea, but headwear was the essential item today. Scorching temperatures brought out the biggest and brightest, and those that lacked practicality made up for it fashionably. And despite reports Australians spent more this Christmas than any other, people still found room to squeeze in some punting. Those who were aboard Dave Atkins' trained Barcelona in the second were happy. He saddled up the favourite Impaler in the feature event as well, a sprint over 900 metres. Jockey Dale Spriggs guiding home the 3-year-old for his third win from just 4 starts. Their Newcastle club rivalry withstanding the early meeting of top seeds Merewether and Hamilton Wickham was being likened to an unofficial final. After rain delayed the start, former state second 11 batsman Reece Soper kick-started things in just the second over. Country speedster Duncan McElveen claimed him next over, the first of a 3-wicket haul, while Neil Crittenden did it all himself to remove Shane Hughes, and it was quickly 2 for 12. Run rate wasn't a drama. Andrew Mullard pummelling the boundary fence early in his innings. But wickets were. A bowling change snared a third, with Mick Hogan's first ball landing in the safe hands of Greg Weller. Despite sporting a broken finger, captain Todd Campbell gritted his teeth as Hamilton still racked up a competitive total. Like he did yesterday, Scott Jarvis came to the crease with King Cumber in trouble. this time against Illawarra club side Balgownie. Unlike yesterday, he didn't reach triple figures. In fact, when he went for 4, Kincumber was 6 for 92. Spinner Paul Mason, the chief destroyer with the ball, finishing with 3 for 21 as Kincumber limped to 160.
The site was only open to earth-moving equipment today, and plenty of it, all part of a large-scale underground firefighting effort. The Southland Colliery has been idle since fire broke out in an underground mine a week ago, with many workers left with no choice but to take annual leave, the rest are sharing what little jobs remain.
The company have indicated there are about 10 positions available each shift, that they can continue to keep people employed in on the surface doing work within that exclusion zone.
It's believed a jet-like engine is being used to extract oxygen from the mine to suffocate the fire, which will result in a massive clean-up operation.
It's going to be a fairly comprehensive and lengthy process that's going to have to take place to ensure that it's done safely. That's the main thing.
An inspection of the damage will be made once the fire is extinguished, at which time the owners, Gympie Gold Limited, will make a decision on the mine's future. But in what the union is calling a minor victory, whatever the outcome, all workers will receive any benefits owed.
If there is a decision made that that mine can't operate into the future, then certainly their entitlements will be made good by Gympie Gold. So we applaud that position.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
The end of April could have been D-Day for the Shortland Wetland Centre, which has in recent years struggled to make ends meet. But the centre has been taken off the endangered list following the sale of 2 hectares of surplus land adjoining the site. The residential zoned land has been sold for $2.1 million to Newcastle development firm Australian Investment Property Trust.
It's secured the future of the Wetland Centre now indefinitely. $2.1 million really does mean we're here for the long haul.
$200,000 of that money will be used to pay a long-standing loan, while $100,000 will be used for some much-needed signage and maintenance work at the wetlands. The remaining money will be put into long-term investments. As for the site itself, it will be developed into a 44-unit housing development.
It'll be a sensitive development to the environment.
Colleen West, NBN News.
The presence of the Dina C2 at the Nelson Bay Police Wharf provided a graphic backdrop for today's safety warning by Port Stephens Water Police. Despite being equipped with life jackets and internationally recognised distress flag, marine radio and flares, it was useless to the 3 crew thrown into the sea when the boat capsized more than 20 kilometres east of Port Macquarie.
You need to have your equipment in an area where you can get to it nice and easy. If the boat was to capsize, have your flares in a flare bucket, so the bucket will float. Your V-sheet also could be put in the flare bucket.
Port Stephens is currently in the midst of the peak boating season, and water police are making random checks to ensure inshore and offshore mariners are licensed and have their vessel prepared for the unexpected. Officers are concerned by the growing number of people who rely on police and water safety volunteers when they have engine failure.
People need to take the responsibility themselves sometimes, where they have to have that extra means of propulsion, whether they have a smaller outboard on board, they have oars on board.
Personal watercraft have also received attention, with users asked to comply with speed and operating restrictions.
They're all clearly marked by marker buoys and signs. People just need to be aware, take a bit of time out and have a look around where they're going to ride first.
Gary Blair, NBN News.